Good evening, and welcome to this special February edition of our Mocktails and Masterpiece series. I am Dana Stone, the Executive Director of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and I'm here today with kind of an unsung hero of the ICO, Ariana, who serves as the ICO's music librarian. So I'm going to pass it over to Ariana so she can kind of give you an idea of who she is and how she became connected with the ICO.
Hi, I'm Ariana. I am from Indianapolis. I grew up here. My music background a little bit is I started on violin when I was 5, kind of transferred to viola and continued that through college. I went to DePauw University, music major there. I'm currently working on my music therapy program, and I got connected to the ICO through Ariana. Kind of introduced me to the organization and found out that they needed a librarian, and I joined music librarian position in 2019.
Okay, so you joined us just before COVID. Did you do a few concerts before everything kind of paused?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I was kind of just getting introduced, and then everything shut down. But it's been really fun to still work throughout the pandemic and just kind of adjusting and figuring put on
Yeah, so we've
concerts.
we've certainly made some changes as to kind of how we distribute music because of the pandemic a little bit, and you've really went with every pivot and adaptation we've needed to make, and we're so thankful for you. So I think there are probably some people watching tonight that don't know what a music librarian is. I think when we think the word librarian, we assume that there is a room of books or scores, for example, and that maybe you need to have some sort of library background. But maybe you can share what that role is and kind of maybe why we call it that.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot that goes into being a librarian. There is an aspect of kind of what you mentioned that we do have like a physical library that you kind of upkeep and you kind of look into and make and see what we have like in but also it involves distributing music to the musicians, working with the concertmaster and principal players on bowing markings and phrasing, and adding those into the section parts, and uh, kind of collecting music after the concert's over and returning any rental music we have and refiling the parts that we do own. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it that you don't really like think about.
Exactly. Well, and for people that don't realize, I mean, ICO comes together 7 times for our subscription series per year. Many of our players some of them are local, but some of them are not. So we find ways to kind of distribute their parts of the music so they can come to the first rehearsal prepared and ready to play. You mentioned the word boeings. And you're a string player, so boeings are second nature to you. But for those of us that aren't string players, maybe you can talk about what is a boeing and why it's so important, and maybe some of the musical choices that go into the boeings for the orchestra.
Yeah, no. So boeings are when you're watching from the audience, kind of from a visual standpoint. If the section is playing, they're bowing up or down. But it also serves an artistic purpose. So I work with the concertmaster and principal players, and they write in how to appropriately play a phrase, whether that you articulate it like smooth or harsh or something, or kind of how an overall passage or phrase needs to be played. And so I will write those into the section parts, and so everything will be kind of uniform, and everyone will with a similar sound, like I said, articulation. So, for example, if you're trying to create a harsh sound to play it, you wouldn't want to play it at like the top of the bow because it's a different place in the bow changes the sound. So,
Great. So that's kind of like a domino effect. So first off, the first violin's concertmaster does the bowings, and then it goes to second violin, and so forth throughout the string section. So you're coordinating all that communication and getting those parts so that the entire orchestra has that uniform look that you wouldn't think that there are multiple choices on how to play a particular phrase, but you know that there are. I know that there are, but people may not realize that. So, kind of one of those pieces. So, when we get a rental, are those typically already bowed, or is that something that has to be started from the beginning?
Yeah, it depends. There are some that have been previously used with other organizations, and so they'll have markings in them. But sometimes we do get ones that have nothing in them, and so you have to start kind of from scratch and work up to yeah, kind of playing it through and listening and trying to figure out what the best choice would be when you don't have that.
Sure, and especially with ICO doing so much new music and also commissioned works, none of those are going to be bowed.
Right.
So there's a lot of extra work that you're putting into that. So, what is the typical timeline for distributing that so that all the parts can be bowed in time for musicians to be prepared for that first rehearsal when we come together?
Yeah, so I actually start my process about 6 to 7 weeks out from the concert date, and that process starts with the boeings probably 6 weeks before the concert, and then I work throughout those weeks to get the boeings completed and marked, and then 2 weeks ahead of the concert is when the musicians will get the music, and they have the music.
So most recently, you've been working on our Metropolis score, which I've seen the full score, and it's about 3.5 inches thick. Um, Maybe you can talk about that experience of transferring all those bowings and all those parts. What was that like?
Yeah, it was you have to pace yourself for sure. You kind of get lost in the music and just kind of like sitting there marking and you're like, oh, and an hour has already passed or something. But yeah, no, it's definitely a lot longer than the typical music that we play. And so just getting each of the individual parts, yeah, it was, yeah, different from
Sure, I'm sure. So, what has been fun and rewarding about serving in this special role with the ICO?
yeah, no, it's been amazing to get to know the musicians better and kind of like acquaint myself with the people and the musicians who are in this area and who play. And I also really enjoyed being able to hear, like you said, the pieces that are commissioned or newer compositions and being introduced to different composers and styles of music that I may not have had the chance to hear before.
Very cool. And I know you always go the extra mile, and we see you at multiple rehearsals, always there to kind of help out musicians, which we're always so thankful for. And I know they are as well, to make sure that everything is done as professionally as we can possibly do it. What have you found to be kind of a challenging piece? I mean, certainly there's been a lot of challenges over the past year and a half with any live performance. Um, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think it's yeah, just been challenging to kind of read like think of how we like distribute the music and making sure if people are, like they don't live nearby, then having to like scan music to people like is a different aspect that we might not have done before. But so yeah, the pandemic has changed yeah, just kind of that process too.
Yeah, I know we kind of stopped trusting a little bit the mail because parts were getting lost and taking way too long to get to the right people. So you've really kind of stepped up with that scanning and distributing, which is a lot of extra, but has been a valuable tool along the way. So, in the past year and a half, and maybe you were connected with ICO somewhat previously, but do you have kind of a favorite program that we've done since you've been with us, or something that you'd like to see ICO perform in the future?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I really enjoyed the Bandoneon performance that we did with Piazzolla. That
Mhm.
was a really, really cool program. And recently, also with Richard Lynn playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons, was a really, really special concert too. So, but all overall, like it's always just amazing to like hear the program come together. You're working with the music for so long, and then you finally get to hear it come to life. So, yeah.
It's really cool that you get to be kind of in those beginning stages and then see everything kind of come to fruition at the end. It's really fun. Um, so why don't you share with us some of the exciting things in your future? I know you mentioned that you're in a program right now. So what's next for Ariana?
Yeah, so I'm currently finishing my equivalency program in music therapy. Since I finished my music major, they kind of let you just take the music therapy courses. And so I've been finishing that, working on looking for internships, and that's kind of what I'm building towards while I'm working here at the ICO. So yeah.
Sure. And do you finish that program this May or?
Yes. Well, I'll be finishing my application process this May, hopefully, and then yeah, we'll see kind of how it goes. So
Well, very
yeah.
exciting. So, Ariana, do you have a favorite composer? It doesn't have to be one that ICO plays. It can be anything.
Oh, ooh, that's a
Sky's the
good
limit.
question. Yeah. I really enjoy works by Schumann. I just yeah, I love like his composition style. So yeah, that's one I enjoy listening to. So
Very fun. I think we have some Schumann coming up, right?
yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll get to enjoy some of your favorite composer in the coming months then. Well, we greatly appreciate all the work that you do on behalf of the ICO. And so some concerts we're dealing with, just three pieces. And some concerts, like when we perform with the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir with Festival of Carols, we're dealing with a myriad of different works. Do you have kind of a tool that you use to kind of manage all of that?
Yeah, I make sure to kind of keep lists, like multiple lists of like all the pieces. And it's also helpful to know the instrumentation, like who is playing in each piece, so that you know that everyone has received their part. But yeah, it's just making sure you have that all squared away so that you know what's what's going on. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with me today so that we can kind of share your special role within the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra.
Thank you so much for having me. This is
You're
great.
welcome. All right. Thanks.